I think. All right. Yeah. Okay. We are in the office today, Jake. Yeah. Maybe you can
Hi
explain.
everyone. Yeah, we've moved our studio to the barn office today. We've got quite a lot going on in the production, so it was a little bit noisy to do it in the roastery today. Cool. We're going to be looking at hand grinders a little bit today and kind of how to dial in your coffee properly at home using a hand grinder. We'll probably focus on using the Comandante. I think it's probably, in my experience, the best option on the market. It's also what I use at home, so I'm a little bit more familiar with this. And we're going to be brewing V60. Cool. So the coffee we're going to be using today is this beautiful coffee from Rwanda, Huye Mountain. So we've been working with David and the guys at Huye Mountain since 2013, so it's a very kind of long-lasting relationship for us. David's quite an important guy in the Rwandan coffee scene. He was actually advising the government way back in, was it 2010, helping them to actually establish specialty coffee in Rwanda. He's kind of gone from there and taken that and then started Huye Mountain. It's also very, very quality focused station. They're really putting a lot of time and effort into the sorting of the coffee. Again, as with Mahembe, it's sorted by hand first at the farms, then again goes through an optical sorter, and then again by hand, just to make sure that there's no defects and that the quality is very, very high. This is a natural coffee, which is kind of interesting for Rwanda. Up until a few years ago, natural process wasn't allowed in Rwanda. And with kind of advances in quality and all these kind of things, and with the rise of specialty coffee, they've started doing it a little bit, and this is just a very, very good example of this kind of processing in Rwanda. Very, very complex, so you're getting very sweet strawberry, raspberry notes, and some very kind of crazy kind of floral aspects going on, hint of jasmine, black tea, all these kind of wonderful flavors. But you also get a little bit of added sweetness and body, I'd say, from the processing. Cool, so let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to show you how to set zero really quickly. I've been talking about that a little bit in some of the other workshops, and this is basically to give you like a reference point on how to establish the right grind for any coffee. So on the back here, we have a little clicker. Now it's very important that you have the lid on when you're setting this, because otherwise if I take this off and I move this, it's not doing anything, it's not changing anything, it's just moving the burrs around. So I have the lid on, and I'm going to click this to the right as a clockwise until the burrs are touching. And I'm going to know it's right because I'm going to release my hand. Alright. And this isn't going to move anymore. So that when that doesn't move, that's zero. Alright, so now I'm going to count basically back from zero. I'm going to wind the burrs away from each other to coarsen up the grind. So the way we dial in coffee normally here, I think this is a really good method, is I'm going to make two brews. One of them is going to be on a setting that I think is going to be much too fine for a good brew, and then the second one is going to be much too coarse. I'm going to taste them both, and I'm going to try and establish whereabouts in this grind size spectrum the perfect grind setting lies. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I'm tasting when I'm doing that and what I'm looking for when I've actually made the brews. So for now, let's start with weighing up our coffee. So the good thing about hand grinders is there's very, very little grind retention. So what I normally do is I'll weigh in the doser. For this recipe, we're using exactly the same as our first little broadcast. I'm going to be using 15 grams of coffee. So I'm just going to weigh up 15 grams. And if you want to be pedantic, you maybe would lose 1 gram. So I usually do 15.1 grams, and then I won't need to weigh it again. So Comandante is really good like this. I take this, I put it upside down here, flip it over, and then all the beans are nicely in there, and then I just need to reattach the bottom and grind. I need to set the grind first though, because I didn't do that.
I was just gonna ask, what's your grind setting at the moment?
Well, this is Brews touching, so it's definitely too fine. That's gonna be a little bit ridiculous. It's gonna be more like a Turkish grind setting. So quickly get rid of any grinds in there. So before I start grinding, I'm gonna set the grind. So for our fine setting, we'll do that first. I've got that like that. So Brews touching, and I'm gonna count 18 clicks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So this is going to be our setting that I think is going to be a little bit too fine. We've got some examples here. It might be quite hard to see on the camera though.
Yeah, shall we just quickly... So this here is a very fine one.
This is going to be our 18 clicks here.
Yeah. Okay, and then the one next to it?
The one next to it is going to be what will be probably our good dial-in, and then the one here...
What's that number?
That's going to be around 20 clicks.
All right.
And then this one here is going to be a little bit too coarse. That's 23 clicks from 0.
All right. So.
Alright, cool. 15.1. Flip it up. Alright, this time the grind settings should be right.
How is grinding it for you? I mean, you have obviously going to the gym. Is it hard?
Yeah, super easy. The birds with a Comandante grinder are super sharp. They're also larger than a lot of the other hand grinders on the market, so it makes it nice and easy. It's also got a very nice, sturdy German build quality, so
yeah,
it's not too much effort.
Yeah. The steel is double bladed, I think
It's
that's
super hard, the steel they use, which also means you get really good you really get a long lifespan from your burrs as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna pre-wet the filters.
Yeah. And you're brewing
first one.
2 at the same time, so that's kind of cool as well, right?
Yeah, well this is usually how we do it when we're dialing in. We want to try and be a little bit more efficient with our time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to discard that water. You definitely want to make sure you don't forget that step, otherwise you're going to have a very diluted tasting coffee.
All right. Just come closer.
So you might have a few grinds here.
Yeah. What
it's
do you
good
do?
to have a little brush handy.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to...
Not waste it.
I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to get everything in there.
Too good. Cool. So...
The rest is going to pop straight in there.
Yeah.
And again, if I've got a few left over.
Yeah. I'm so always curious about the aromas and what you're smelling there.
Well, this is definitely...
Funk.
It's very funky. Yeah, I get super strong, like almost overripe, but just like extremely ripe strawberries is the main aroma for me with this coffee.
Wow, cool, nice.
I get a few kind of spices as well, maybe even like nutmeg, I would say.
Yeah.
Right.
And how many grams?
I'm using 15 grams.
15 grams.
So I would recommend using either exactly 15 grams, or if you want to be a little bit pedantic in case you're losing a few grinds in the grinding process, you can put 15.1 grams. That's what I normally do.
Yeah.
So again, I'm weighing out 15 grams.
Yeah.
15.1 grams.
Yeah. Oh, Andre is online. Hi.
And this time I'm going to make sure that I don't forget to adjust my grind size. So very important, putting the lid back on. So I know I'm already at 18 clicks now. So now I'm going to go to 23 clicks for our setting that I think is going to be a little bit too coarse.
Yeah.
So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Perfect.
Yeah.
So same as the last time. Grinder, upside down, clicks on perfectly. give it a little shake.
Perfect.
Screw it back on the bottom.
Yeah. So this is Comandante. Just someone asking here. And the click direction, it says at the bottom this way.
Yeah, it's very clearly marked, but if you want to know, it's to go finer, you're turning clockwise, to go coarser, you're turning anti-clockwise.
Yeah, cool. Very good.
It's just like a normal screw, basically.
Yeah. How long is the grinding? I'm not measuring. Is it a minute for 15 grams? Or
no, less than that, like, 20 seconds or something.
Okay.
It's really not much. It's not a lot of effort.
All right. Cool.
And I think you're getting a much more consistent particle size with a Comandante than you are for definitely any of the equivalently priced electric grinders that I've seen on the market.
Yeah. All right. So let's hope we're
just pre-wetting the filter.
Okay. Just for those who weren't here for the V60 class, why do you pre-wet?
I just want to wash away any loose paper particles from the filter, and I also want to preheat the vessel as well a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. So
the recipe is online. We did that a few days ago.
The recipe's online. I can talk people through it as I go.
Yeah.
Maybe as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use 15 grams of coffee here.
Yeah.
And 250 grams of water. I'm going to do a 30-gram bloom.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to pour up to 100 grams at 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then at 50 seconds, I'm going to pour to 150 grams. At 1 minute 15, I'm going to pour to 200 grams.
Yeah.
At 1 minute 40, I'm going to pour to 250 grams. And then I'm going to give it a gentle swirl.
Yeah.
And you'll see what I mean when I do it.
While you're grinding, you probably preheat the water.
Exactly. I've got the water sitting here preheated. Right. We're going to use 95-degree water for this recipe. Cool. And I give it a little settle as well, just so it's nice and flat when I start brewing.
God, I can smell it to here. So,
it's so nice. So fragrant.
Yeah. Wow. Nice.
They're also doing, obviously, wash coffees at Huye Mountain. A wash version is pretty much what we use every year for our Christmas coffee as well.
Yeah.
Also super complex. It's one of my favorite coffees that we buy. Cool. All right, so I'm ready to start. I'm just going to quickly talk you through making 2 brews at a time if you haven't tried this before. First of all, obviously, you're going to need 2 of everything. So 2 V60s, 2 servers, 2 sets of scales. Only 1 kettle though. So I'm going to do exactly the same recipe, but I'm going to stagger them. So I'm going to start the second one 12 seconds after I start the first one. Once I get going, it's pretty much just like going straight from one to the other. So I'm not sure how much talking I'm going to be able to do because I'm going to need to concentrate a little bit.
All right.
All right, so let's get started. So I'm doing a nice zigzag motion.
All right. Let's agitate a little bit.
I just want to make sure all the coffee beans, all the grinds are covered. And then at 12, I start the second one, do the same thing again.
Okay. How many grams of water did you say?
30 grams.
30.
Now I'm waiting for 30 seconds. And I'm going to pour quite aggressively on this. I'm having to bend quite a little bit because this is a much lower table than I'm normally using to brew coffee on.
All right.
You can see I'm going nice circular motions.
Yeah.
And that took me 8 seconds. So you're aiming for 7 to 8 seconds with this pour, which is quite aggressive, definitely more aggressive than the other pours that we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I'm finishing up in the middle, 50 seconds. So as you can see, there's not a lot of time. It's pretty much just switching from one side to the other.
Yeah, nice.
I'm going to have to go see a chiropractor, I think, after doing this because I'm having to bend down so low. But you get the idea. All right, 15 seconds. Now these pours, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, I'm pouring much slower. The flow rate is really, really gentle. I'm aiming to pour 50 grams in 10 seconds.
All right.
So it's going to take a bit of practice, probably, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It involves a little bit of control, I'd say. You definitely want to get yourself a nice gooseneck kettle as well. I'm using a Hario kettle at the moment, but there's a few other ones on the market. But I like the Hario.
Good old Hario.
Good old Hario, exactly. So, quickly going to give that a gentle swirl.
I see. Get all the ground wet there.
Exactly, and it's going to make sure, well, it's definitely going to help reduce the channeling a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's going to wash any grinds that were what you'd say high and dry sitting up on the side of the filter as well, and get everything into the extraction. It's going to give you a much more even extraction.
Great.
Now, just as I said in the first video we did, you can swirl at different times in the brew, but you've got to be careful, because if you overdo it, you can end up choking the brew, and it's going to take much too long for everything to flow down, and you're going to get some over extracted flavors, because what's happening is all the fines in the brew are sinking straight to the bottom, and they're basically clogging it up like a plug.
Yeah. How do over extraction? How does it taste? How do I identify over extraction?
The biggest sign, I think, is bitterness.
Yeah.
That's what I would be looking out for. You can also get dryness. When we say dry, it's kind of a feeling you get on your tongue, like if you ate sand or something, I guess. It's very unpleasant. But the thing with dryness is you also get it with under extraction as well, but it's a different type. So with under extracted coffees, you might experience dryness more in the aftertaste, whereas with over extracted coffees, the dryness is really upfront, almost immediately when you taste the coffee. So under extracted, you're probably going to get a sharper acidity, and it might taste a little bit astringent as well, and you're going to get this dryness, like I said, in the aftertaste.
Yeah.
So it's really about finding a balance. I tested these before, these grind settings before I did this. I'm using water that's 130 ppm, so kind of very standard in the middle of what the SCA ranges for hardness would be.
Yeah.
So if you're using water of a similar hardness and brewing at the same temperature using these grind settings, both the lowest and both the finest and the coarsest setting are both still going to be within an acceptable range of extraction.
Yeah.
So I've basically got, with the finest setting, it's around 21.5% extraction, and on the coarsest setting, it's around 18% extraction.
All right. We will
So
taste that.
somewhere in between that range.
Yeah.
We can, at the end, we're going to test with our refractometer as well.
Cool. The question popped up, is the dryness related to Comandante?
No. This is related to extraction.
Yeah.
So over extraction, generally you're going to experience some dryness up front. Under extraction, you're going to get some dryness at the back.
Yeah.
So if you want to zoom in,
Yeah.
thanks to that swirl, I've got some nice flat beds, which is what we're after.
Yeah, right. Very good. Now the color of the brew, is that giving us any idea about the extraction?
If you hold it up to the light, you maybe be able to see some slight differences.
Yeah.
We can't...
Maybe put it on the white.
Maybe need a little bit of lightness coming
Yeah.
through. If you hold it up to a window with the sun shining through, you would be able to see a little difference. So the brew with the finer grind would be a little bit darker.
Yeah.
But it would be hard to tell from looking at a brew, unless it was way off, whether it was under extracted or over extracted. I think you'd need some extreme vision to be able to see that. Also, different coffees are going to look different as well. Different roast degrees as well.
Yeah. Couple of questions. How many clicks for a Turkish coffee? How fine?
Well, that would be very fine. Generally, Turkish coffee, because it's sitting in the water and without filtration, it's very fine. I would say maybe like 4 clicks, 5 clicks, as fine as you can go, basically.
Yeah.
Generally, when you see like the recommended grind settings on commercial grinders, Turkish will be even finer than espresso, which is already very fine.
Yeah.
So as fine as you can go, and with it still actually grinding through the grinder would be probably good for that.
Cool. What's next?
All right, so we're going to test our extraction now. So I've got my fine, and here I've got my coarse. So I'm just going to pour a little bit into these glasses.
Nice.
And just going to cool it down a little bit. I'm also going to taste it myself.
Alright. Nice.
So, I'm going to give you a little pointer here on the way I like to approach this. Obviously, I'm going mostly off sensory, but you can do a few visual things for yourself as well at home, super easy. What I like to do is take a piece of paper and draw a line like this, and I write my fine setting on one and my coarse setting on the other. And I'm usually thinking about 4 things. So I'm thinking about the acidity of the coffee, and when I say acidity, I'm talking about the quality of the acidity, not how much or how little acidity there is in their cup. I'm talking about the sweetness. Again, that's the quality of the sweetness, the body, and the cleanliness of the cup. So the body is, it's kind of like the mouthfeel of the coffee. So is it creamy? Is it juicy? Is it a little bit thin and astringent? Is it too thick or beefy? So that's basically what I'm looking at. You could draw even 4 lines if it helps you to mentally divide these categories up. And it's good to train yourself as well to separate the different aspects of flavor, because it is extremely complex. So I'm going to start with my finer setting. It's quite good. But for me, I think this is a little bit too much. So basically what I'm tasting here is it's very, very thick. And I can't really distinguish the finer characteristics within the acidity. It's a little bit muddled because the strength is a bit higher and the extraction's a bit higher. I'm not getting any bitterness, but it is mostly sweetness and not a lot of acidity. So I'm losing a little bit of the complexity that I know is in this coffee. Alright, and I've got my coarser grind setting here. So I'm getting much more of the acidity in this cup.
Yeah.
It's still got sweetness, but it's a little bit thin in the end for me.
Can you take us through the 4 categories cup by cup?
Cool, sure. Let's start with the finer setting. We'll start with the sweetness. Very sweet. That would definitely be the dominant aspect of the flavor. The body is very thick, very creamy. The acidity is not as present and not as clear as I would like from this coffee in particular. And the cleanliness or the balance is a little bit off for me. It's too much on the sweet, thick, creamy side and missing out on some of the nice, delicate flavors that I would like to get from this coffee.
How many flavors can you describe in that cup?
In this cup?
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting the strawberry. I'm getting milk chocolate, maybe even some dark chocolate. You know when you get like an 80% chocolate and it's almost like fruity? I'm getting some flavors like this, but I'm not getting as much of the there's definitely blueberry actually in this as well. So heavy on the berries.
I guess it keeps changing in the cooling.
And it does. It definitely changes as it cools down.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting so much of the floral aspects.
Yeah.
When I move on to the coarser setting, I'm still getting some of the chocolate flavors, definitely still getting the strawberry, the blueberry, but I'm also getting some bergamot and some black tea florals coming through as well. So there's definitely another level of complexity. But I'm not liking the mouthfeel as much. It's almost actually, there's a hint of dryness in the aftertaste, which lets me think that it's not under extracted, but it's less extracted than what I would say the ideal brew, the ideal grind size would be for this coffee. Cool. So I would draw a line. I would have my 18 here and my 23 here. And I would say about there. So I would say the perfect grind for this would probably be about 21 clicks. So a little bit closer to the coarser setting, but not as coarse as the coarser setting.
Yeah.
So what we can do now is we can test our extraction.
Cool.
So this is a refractometer. This is basically using light and how it's using an infrared light to measure the amount of total dissolved solids in the liquid. So in this case, the dissolved solids are coffee.
All right.
So from that, we can calculate our strength, and from the strength, we can do a calculation to work out our extraction. So I'm going to take a little syringe here,
All right.
take a small sample, and you really only need a few drips.
Yeah.
You can also filter this as well.
Yeah.
If you're doing this for espresso, I would definitely recommend using a filter. VST make them, and they just screw onto the end of the syringe. So you want to take a sample, screw on the filter, and then do exactly what I've done here.
All right.
V60 is already quite clean. There's not a lot of coffee grinds left in the brew, so it's not as important as it would be for espresso, for example.
All right.
Alright, so I'm going to close the lid. I'm going to hit go.
Can we read that? Yeah, I think that's reading it. 152.
Okay, so that is definitely over extracted. So 1.52 is probably 22 point something % extraction. If I was just to quickly do the maths in my head.
How do you do the math?
I use an app because I'm not good at maths.
All right.
So there is a you can do the maths, but I'm honestly, Ralph, that's not my strong point.
So what's the app?
So the app is also made by VST, which you can download. There are a few other free apps on the market as well, but the VST one is definitely the best. And that gives you the option to do different brew methods as well, because the calculation works differently for espresso and for drip brewing and for immersion brewing. It's all slightly different because of the retention of water in the brew.
Yeah. Is 22% high or low?
It's high.
It's high.
So it's not too high. I mean, a coffee can taste good at 22% for sure. It can even taste good at 23% or potentially even higher. But generally speaking, a good extraction with our coffee is going to be somewhere between 18 and 21%.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit high. I'm finding it's a little bit muddled.
Yeah.
It's to do with the strength as well. So 1.52 means 1.52% of this brew is coffee as opposed to water. So that's what we're talking about when we say strength.
Okay.
Extraction means that 22% of this coffee in here has been extracted into the liquid. So it's slightly different.
All right.
This strength for a V60 I find is a little bit too high. I like to drink filter coffee more at like 1.3 to 1.4% strength.
All right.
I find your palate can perceive the more subtle flavors a little bit better at that strength.
Yeah.
So we can measure our coarser brew.
Just a question came up, and I think it was measured before. The Comandante grinder is pretty close to an EK result in terms of extraction because it's so even.
It's super even. Obviously, the biggest difference, I would say, is with a Comandante, you're using conical burrs. Conical burrs create a slightly different shape of grinds than flat burrs do, which an EK uses. An EK is using flat burrs like this, and it's also vertical, and that creates an extremely even particle size. Having said that, the conical burrs with the Comandante are extremely good, and it does create an extremely even particle size.
All right.
You maybe get arguably a little bit more sweetness from conical burrs as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Couple of questions are coming up that we already clarified. How do you count the clicks and so on? So I would recommend just watching the whole video. But yeah, we will post it on Facebook for sure.
Yeah,
later.
cool.
Yeah. Mm. Cool.
Cool.
Okay, another question. Sorry to interrupt, Jake, while you're doing this counting there. This slurry of the brew, does it give you an indication of how good the brew is?
If it's not flat, then yes. Using the technique that I've kind of gone through with you guys just then, with a swirl at the end, you should get a nice flat brew. But if you're not doing that, if you're trying to create a flat brew without any stirring or without any swirling, yes, it will. So if you've poured badly, if you've poured unevenly, then your bed, which is how the coffee looks after the extraction, won't be nice and flat like that. So if you've done it wrong, it's going to be all uneven and different mounds there, and that's going to show you that you've got an uneven extraction basically.
Yeah. Then a question from Dirk: does a muddy layer on top the slurry matter?
It can do. That can be a sign that you've got a lot of fines in your brew, or that your grind size has been too fine.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would always, as with anything, go on flavor first.
Yeah.
Even before using the refractometer.
Yeah. So now I
just got rid of that. So that was at 1.38.
Right. Okay.
Sorry. So that 1.38 is about 20% extraction.
Yeah.
So that basically means, like I said, we're probably going to have around 21% with the 21 clicks. I think we said. Yeah.
And then I think also this is an espresso roast, so this coffee is a little bit more developed, so naturally we would expect a little bit more of extraction there, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is not necessarily the case always. It's got a lot to do with the varietal, the climate, the altitude, all these things. For example, I find a lot with the Scott Labs varietals, especially coming from Kenya, always get a higher extraction than I would from other coffees. So it's not necessarily the amount coming from the development time in the roast, but that can definitely play a part.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is an espresso roast. But again, the way we roast is our espresso works perfectly for filter. It's more like, I would say, an omni roast almost.
Yes. Yeah.
We're really not trying to go too heavy on the development.
Maybe quickly on why do you recommend grinding just before the brewing?
Basically, the coffee is constantly aging. As soon as you roast it, it's aging and the flavor's changing. The more surface area you have, the quicker that process is happening because there's more contact with oxygen, I guess. So the quicker, the closer the time to your brew that you grind, the better, basically. I would always grind fresh. That's why I'd always recommend having some sort of grinder at home. You're going to get a much better result.
Yeah.
The other thing, which we didn't talk about, is the age itself of the coffee. And this is definitely a thing that the style of roast will affect. So with an espresso roast, you're going to have a slightly longer development time, and that is actually going to mean that you won't need to let the coffee rest for as long as a filter roast. So with a filter roast, it's kind of like the lower the development time, the longer it might need to rest, but also the bigger the window in which your coffee is going to taste good, generally speaking, in my experience. But obviously, with anything with coffee, there's some variables.
Yeah. So what else do we have here?
Cool. I'm just going to quickly go through the Time More grinder. This is the mini version.
All right.
This is
so cute.
Super cool. I love this grinder.
It's this grip there.
So it works very much in the same way. So the compartment just pulls off like that. Yeah. And we can actually count our clicks in much the same way. So this is super cool as well. And just like clicks into place like that. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go clockwise.
Yeah, come closer.
Until
I see. Okay, same way.
So probably one more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we go.
Kind of
so that stops. So that will be 0 for us.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. So on this, the clicks are a little bit further apart. So you're not going to be able to have the same level of accuracy that you are with the Comandante. I'm just going to point out super quick, I'm using the standard setup with the Comandante. If you have the red click set up, basically you're going to have to double all of the numbers that I've just given you.
I see.
So with the red clicks, you have even more accuracy, I guess, and you can really fine tune your dial-ins.
Cool.
With the Time More, I found about 15 clicks off the burst touching. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
Is going to give you your kind of finer setting. You'll probably get around just over 21% extraction if you're using, like I said, 95 degree water that's around 130 ppm.
Yeah.
You'll get around just over 21%. And then for your coarser setting, only about 18 clicks. So the window is really not is not as big.
Okay. We had a quick question on water. I think yesterday we said Volvic is a good option to...
Volvic is a great option. I think it's... Or in Germany, Spreequell as well. It's a little bit cheaper and also very similar mineral content.
Anything that's not remineralized, basically.
Yeah, I mean, more minerals definitely doesn't mean better. So a lot of the mineral waters on the market actually advertise of, we've got so much magnesium and all these other minerals, but that's actually not going to be good for making coffee. Yeah.
And then next to the Time War Nano, we have the air grinds here. Right?
Yeah, we've got the air grind, and then we've got the Feld, the knot grind.
That's Peter Kilpatrick in Edinburgh. He's doing a great job there. So these are the options we have on the website.
Yeah. We have most of these available, I think, as well, except the air grind has maybe sold out.
On the way,
It's on the way, though. We should have more.
Yeah.
Very popular.
Any electric grinder? The question just came up that you recommend in a medium price range for filter brews at home.
Yeah, the Encore is good, but again, it's a similar price as the Time More. I personally would recommend getting a hand grinder, also because that can go on your backpack and you can go take it with you traveling. I take my last time I went home to New Zealand, took my Commandante with me. It was great, did a road trip, and I had excellent coffee with my Aeropress every day. So
perfect. I think we need to wrap it up a little bit. What's the next session?
So I think it'll be good. Maybe if you guys have any ideas on what you'd like to see from us, maybe send us a private message on Instagram with your ideas, and then I think on Wednesday morning at 9:30 we can do a workshop based on your suggestions.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jake.
Cool. Ciao, guys.
Bye.